Hello, Brother Sewing and Crafting family. Angela Wolf here, Brother Brand Ambassador, and I'm very excited to be with you today. Today, we're going to talk about, I'll give you a guess. It's National Sewing Month. What is one item that always seems to come up, whether it's in a garment or on bags or in your jeans? Did I get you? Zippers. So today I want to talk about zippers, and I'm going to show you two ways to sew a zipper. One with a standard zipper, and how to get that in there without having the wavy seams. If you've had wavy seams when you've sewn zippers, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, you're already a pro. And I'm also going to give you a tip for sewing in an exposed zipper, especially if you're using it for a pocket or in a bag, something like that. So let's pop in, say hi. I see you all rolling in. So by the way, we will be live in the chat today, not live on the screen. So I will go back and answer your questions in the chat. So, all right, let's head on over to the zippers. So here are a few different samples for you. And for those of you totally new to sewing zippers, especially if you go to buy one, it has so many different descriptions. Like for example, these are metal zippers. This zipper is typically called a pant zipper, a jean zipper, but it's 4.5 in width. That's from here to here. This one is 5.0 wide. So if you're looking at two different zippers, look at the difference. 5 and 4.5. So there's they call this a jean zipper quite often, but I've put this in my jeans, and that's a pretty big tab to have in your jeans. So I use this a lot of times for an exposed zipper for my sleeves, exposed zipper in bags, and for pockets. This is the zipper that I tend to use for jeans. They all come in different sizes, as you can see. Here's a typical pant size, but all different sizes. Depending if you have a wider waistband, you don't need as long of a zipper, right? So those are the metal zippers. Then you have an invisible zipper, which has an entirely different look. The only part that you'll be able to see on this zipper if you sew it in correctly is this section here. It opens and closes, and that's an entirely different way to sew this. I'm not showing this today, but I do have this on my YouTube if you have never sewn an invisible zipper before. All right, and then a standard zipper. So a standard zipper has a closed bottom, as you can see here. If it opens at the bottom, that's what they call a separating zipper or a jacket zipper. So it's closed at the bottom, comes up to the top. And if you notice on the top, there's two little tabs right here. These are called the stops. So that's so when you zip up your zipper, it doesn't come all the way off. Now, if you can't find the exact length that you need for your project, there are a few different ways that you could adjust this, but typically I will keep this bottom part intact right here. And if I have to make the zipper shorter, I will cut it from here and add 2 more tabs down here, or even a tack stitch will work for that as well. All right, so there's that. So today we're going to sew this zipper, and I'm going to give you tips for sewing an exposed zipper. Slide these to the side. So what do you need? Well, first of all, depending on what Brother machine you have, your zipper foot might look different. This is one of the most common ones, and I'll bring you just a little bit closer here. Oops, wrong way. Come on this way. All right, so this zipper here, when it's attached, you either attach it to this side or to this side. You have to adjust your needle because, as you can see, your needle is going to go right into that section right here or on this side. So you can't have your needle in the center position or you'll break it. Here's another zipper foot. This is from my PQ 1500. I love that machine. I use it for just about everything, especially if I'm basting fabric together. It's so fast. So this zipper has an adjustment here where you can slide the zipper foot. This would be attached to your machine, and I would either slide the zipper to the right or to the left. So pretend my finger's the machine. So that's a little bit different. But again, you can adjust this. Again, there's a little notch here and here, so depending on which side your needle's going on. So because this one slides, the PQ 1500 is a straight stitch machine, so I cannot move the needle from the left and the right. The needle's always going to be in the same position. So this will move according closer or further apart from your zipper, as you can see here, or if I'm on this side. Make sense? So this one, unless you're using the PQ 1500, your zipper foot probably looks like this. Now, there are other teeth, especially for if you're using the invisible zipper, which we're not going to do today. That's a whole different looking foot. So we're going to use this. I've got my zipper, And you need fusible interfacing. This is fusible interfacing. This is not embroidery stabilizer. This is for garments. And if you're looking for a certain kind, you could always message me. It's not a brother product, but it's fusible interfacing. It's very common in the garment industry. And this one's very lightweight. So I can use this on the fabric and it won't show through. And this is to stabilize your seam before you sew that zipper in. All right, let's head on over and I'll show you a few things with some fabric. All right, and on my way over there, if you have any questions, again, we are live in the chat today, so I will be popping in to answer those questions. So fusible interfacing. Now, when I say fusible, there are different weights of fusible interfacing. This is a very lightweight fusible because I just want it to stabilize the seam that I'm putting the zipper in. I don't want it to show through to the right side, and I don't want it to make that seam real stiff, if you know what I mean, because this is just to stabilize. So sometimes if you're putting a zipper in maybe on the side, that has a curve. So you're not always sewing a zipper in to a straight seam. Today we are, but if you're not, you really need to use this stabilizer because you don't want, when you're sewing, it will stretch out the fabric as you go if it's not straight on the grain line. And even I've seen some, when it's on the grain line, it still stretches a little bit. So this will just give you a little bit more sewing success on that. All right, let's head to the ironing board and I'll show you how to prep your fabric. All right. Here we are. And I'm just popping back over. I guess I need my glasses to see this one. Okay, so here I have 2 pieces of fabric as if it were a seam that let me make you a little bit darker. There you go. Is that better? It was a little hot on there. So here's my fabric. I just cut a piece apart, just pretending this is my seam that I'm sewing in my zipper. So let's just say this is maybe your center back seam where you're sewing in a zipper. Make sure that both seams are cut straight, or like your pattern is, I should say. Now, these are not the same lengths, but that's right. This is just for a practice anyways. Okay, so if this is your seam, this fusible is cut 1 inch wide. I always use 1 inch wide because by the time you sew the zipper in, and I usually have 1/2 inch seam allowances, after this is sewn in, you have to imagine that you're not going to see it you won't see it once it's sewn in. So this is the right side of the fabric. Let's flip this over to the wrong side. Okay, and take your zipper. And if this is as long as my seam is going to be, then I want this stabilizer to go just below the bottom of this zipper. So I always keep these 1 inch pieces cut out. I leave them hanging on one of my lamps here at the office because I'm always sewing zippers, so I can just quickly go grab a 1 inch section. All right, this one looks like it's a little bit off. It's like 1 1/8 inches. Okay, so when I'm sewing garments, I will put this interfacing on before I serge that entire seam. I'm not going to be using the serger today, but I'll just kind of fill you in how this works. So if you've never done this before, a lot of times I'll take a small piece of this stabilizer and press it to the fabric to make sure you can't see it from the right side. If you can see it from the right side after you press it in, I will use pinking shears and just trim on the outside of this with pinking shears, just on the outside, because then that gives a kind of a jagged edge that's pressed to your fabric. All right. Always use a press cloth when you're pressing interfacing. And when you have the iron, you don't want to slide the iron all over because this can get really messy. So I'm just going to lay this fabric on top, use it as press cloth. If you're using an iron shoe, you probably want to take the iron shoe off before you press on the interfacing because the iron shoe doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't press the interfacing quite as well. I always use a little bit of steam with mine. All right, and we can see, yeah, that looks good. I'm going to give it one more little pressing here now that it's pressed on. And as you can see, I lift and press. I don't go like this. All right, that looks great. So if this was a garment, I would run both of these sides to the serger or run it through your sewing machine with an overlock stitch to finish those edges. For this purpose, I'm not. We're just focusing on the zipper. And to insert this zipper, I don't want the zipper to show, okay? This is not an invisible zipper, but I really don't want the zipper. This is not an exposed zipper. So let's just say we're putting this on the back of a dress or something like that. Take your fabric with right sides together. I'm just going to kind of compare how far down I have to go here. And you could use a fabric marking tool if you want. I'm just going to use a pin for this purposes. But I want to mark how far down I need to sew. So what I'm going to do is baste this seam and then sew it. So I need this to go, you can hear my iron. That is not my stomach, that's the iron. And on your pattern, by the way, your pattern would be marked for where the zipper opening is. So use the notches on your pattern to compare this. But in this case, I'm going to say that's the opening right here. Go a little higher. So this is the top. I'm going to run it through the sewing machine and run a basting stitch, 5.0 to right here. Do a stay stitch or a light back stitch. Change the stitch length to 2.5 or 3.0 and stitch down the rest of the way. All right, I'll meet you at the sewing machine. For this part, we're not going to be using the zipper foot. You're just going to be using your standard foot. All right, here we go. Today I'm using the Luminaire, but this would be the same on basically any machine that you're using. Okay, so here's my straight stitch. I prefer to have my needle in the center position. You can do whatever you feel more comfortable with. So there's mine in the center position. And my stitch length, because the first part is going to be basting, I'm going to change this to 5.0, just like that. All right, let's head on over here. It's not Friday, so it should not be one of those crazy flashing camera days, right? All right, I think I put some contrasting thread in here. I'm double checking. I think I did. All right, so I don't need a back stitch right here. I'm just going to stitch down. And as you can see, my stitch is just about in the center of that stabilizer. Now, if you have a fabric marking pen right here, you would see the mark. I'm just going to take the pin out and use my finger as a guide. When I get to here, do a stay stitch, which if you have this on your machine, it's right here. Or do a back stitch, whichever one you prefer. All right, let's slide back over here. I'm going to change the stitch length to 3.0. The stitch length really depends on how thick your fabric is. If you're using something really thin, you might have it at a 2.5. If you're using something really thick, you might even have it as a 3.5. But 3.0 seems to be a pretty good stitch length for most cottons and jeans and things like that. Denim, I should say. All right, so when you would get to the end of your seam, you would obviously back stitch or stay stitch. But this is just a scrap of fabric, so all right. We have our seam and we have our basting stitch. Let's go back to the ironing board. All right. First thing I like to do is when it's flat, I'll give it a quick pressing. Just to make sure it's nice and flat. Looks great on both sides. Now open your seam up. And you're going to give it a little pressing with some steam. If you have a tailor's clapper, use your tailor's clapper. What that does is the steam will combine with the fabric to make a nice crease right here. All right. And look at that. It's pressed open. It looks beautiful. So where did my basting stitch go? I can see the back stitch right here. So you would have these notches in your fabric as a guide right here. I'll just snip them so you can see. So I know that when I'm attaching this zipper, this section right here needs to be above these notches. It could be below as well, but if you're going to stitch around this, you really need to know where this bottom part is because you will break a needle if you go over that. So some people like to use fabric tape, something like that to hold this in place. I don't, but feel free if that's what you like to do. There's some wash away stuff. I just don't like having anything extra on my fabric that could potentially not come out or not come out appropriately. All right, so from the front side, and if you look closely, there's my zipper teeth. I just line up that seam right with the teeth. I'll put a couple of pins there just to hold this in place. So I would love to know when you sew your zipper in, do you like to use that fusible disappearing tape to hold that in place? I'm just curious. I mean, they've come out with so many new tools through the years, and I'm kind of an old school sewer because I learned when they didn't have a lot of those things. And some of the stuff I just haven't, I'm not going to talk about brand names or anything because that's not a brother product anyways, but you have to be really careful what you put on your fabric. Now, cotton's pretty resilient as far as getting rid of washout stabilizers and things like that. But when it comes to satins or silks, oh yeah, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole because if you can't get it out, then all of a sudden your whole seam is ruined. So I'm just putting 2 pins to hold this in place. Again, there's the zipper teeth. I'll bring you in a little closer here. Lined up right with this seam. So when I start sewing, just a little heads up. This zipper head is wider than your entire area. So you have 2 options. You can either open it up a little bit, stitch down, and then close it. But if you're using this on a dress or a garment, if you do that, what happens is, if I open this up and stitch real close to the edge, zip it up, and then continue my seam down, when I open this basting stitch, guess what happens? This pulls open. So what I prefer to do is stitch really slowly along this edge and go right around the edge of that foot, or this, not foot, this, the zipper head. So just try that sometime. It's a little tricky, but it actually looks like your seam is straight, and then this will stay closed. That was a tip. I don't remember who I learned it from. I mean, I should say what book, because I read all the books way pre-YouTube days when I sewed in zippers, and it was in one of the couture sewing books. So it was just a little tip. And you know what? I love that because if I, again, when I open this, if I were to sew right next to it, when I zip it back up, there's too much bulk right here and it pulls the seam open. All right. Again, you drop your questions in. I'll check the chat on the social side because I know there's probably going to be a few questions on that. And if you've never sewn a zipper before, if you've ever had your zipper kind of wonky as you sew it in, this basting that seam shut first is just really easy. And then use that stabilizer, the fusible stabilizer. And look, I'm holding my fabric up. The stabilizer's not stiff. It's the same weight as the fabric. So you don't even know what's on there. And if you look from the backside really close, you can't see it anymore because we only used 1 inch. So it's hidden in that seam. Make sense? All right, let's head to the sewing machine and we'll sew this zipper in. All right, so you can see here, we've got the foot. I'm just going to take this header down so it's not blocking the machine. Just hold on 1 second. There you go. Okay, a little bit better. So on here, I'm going to remove my foot. And again, I can hook the zipper up on the left or the right side. So I like to sew down and then over and back up. You could also go this way, over and back up. It's totally up to you. Let's see. No, I'm going to go this side. It'll be easier with the camera. So I'm going to put this foot on the right side, just like that. I know that my zipper head is right here, and I also want to know where my zipper bottom is. It's right here. that bottom stop. I need to mark that with a pin or something so I don't go over it. So I'm just checking to see if I have any fabric marking pens. I do not. You know why? Because I cleaned my studio this weekend. Every time I do that, I should just leave everything on the sewing filming table, right? So I know that that's the end of that. I want to make sure that I don't stitch on that end. And you can feel it as well if you touch closely. All right, so if I'm going to stitch down this way, my foot down, I can feel that zipper head here, and I want to check my needle. So if I bring you in just a wee bit closer here, I always get it backwards. One way or the other, when I take my needle straight down here, right now it's in the center position, and I can see it's right in the center of that hole right there. So by the way, I think earlier when I mentioned that you can't have your needle in the center position, I misspoke. You can have it in the center position, but what I was trying to say is be careful where your needle is, because if I move this too far to the left, it could hit that foot. So just want to make sure that that was clear. All right. Now I'm going to use a stitch length of 3.0. That looks pretty good. Sometimes when I'm sewing, if I'm trying to get closer to the zipper, but my foot won't go that close, then I will use the needle and move the needle over a little bit. So I'm just going to slide you over just a wee bit so I can stitch on the other side of you. This is called sewing yoga. Isn't that what we call this? All right, so I just want to make sure that I've got some of that in hand, which I do. I like to use the hand wheel to get started to make sure that I'm not anywhere near that zipper head right here. All right, I think we're past it. Yep. All right. And you can see your zipper foot is right up along the edge of that zipper, of the zipper teeth. Oops. So if you want your stitch to be closer to the zipper teeth, then you need to move your needle over. All right, I can feel that zipper stop right there. Again, I like to use the hand wheel when it gets close to those because trust me, as much as I sew, I've still accidentally sewn right over that. And let me tell you, it will wake you up. That was 2 stitches to the center. Now go 2 more stitches. Well, actually, that was 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. That tells me that my line will be the same distance on both sides. All right, I'll start again just with a few hand wheel stitches. Once you get used to sewing the zippers, you can get these in really fast. Just giving you some tips for the total newbies at sewing zippers. And I can see that, feel that zipper head right here. I'm just going to lift it facing up. Use that hand wheel to get around that. There you go. Do you have to use the hand wheel? No. I just prefer to, especially when I'm teaching someone that's pretty fairly new to the zipper side. All right, there's our zipper. And it looks like it's a little wider at the top, but once you have it on, you'll be really surprised. So let's head over to the ironing board. Grab your seam ripper. All right, what do you think so far? Minus that I was leaning over one side a little bit too much. Minus that. So here's your zipper. And if you're not leaning over a camera, you can even chalk yourself in a line if you need to keep this straight, because you want it to look really good when you're finished. So now I just take this and open up the basting stitches. I'm just using my hand first. just so you can see while I'm standing here. So this zipper head that we sewed around, now when this is closed, it will stay closed. That's a big tip, right? All right, so drop your questions in. I'm going to meet you back at the ironing board with the seam ripper, and then we're going to talk about the second zipper. All right. Grabbing my seam ripper. Here we go. I would love to know in the chat if you like sewing zippers, you're afraid of zippers, you don't like sewing zippers. All right, so down here, this is the bottom of your basting stitch right down here. Just going to try to find that thread there. And that's it. And she's out of there. So again, because I sewed around this zipper head, when it's closed, look at that, it stays closed. And this part up here will be in your top seam. So it does angle out just a little bit, but you will not see that. That's much better than having this pushed open where your zipper head is showing. Make sense? All right, forgive me for any crooked sewing as I was leaning over the camera. Right? All right, and then on the back side, as you can see, there's the edge of your fabric. That would have been serged or overlocked. And you can't see any of that interfacing because it's enclosed inside that zipper. It's nice and the same weight as the fabric, so it's not stiff. And that's how simple it is to sew in a zipper. All right, that's a standard zipper. Now let's take a look at an exposed zipper. Now there's many ways. Say that like a couple times. Many ways to sew in an exposed zipper. But one of the common ways is to have it where you have, it's going in a pocket. It's going in, especially with bags. I use mine in my sleeves, like I mentioned. And if you're looking for more in-depth tutorials, again, those are on my YouTube channel. I've done quite a few with zippers. So just go to Angela Wolf and you'll see them on there. I haven't done too many on the brothers side because usually I'm hosting it and not showing. So this is like a first for you. All right, again, I need my stabilizer. So when I'm sewing in something like this, I actually make the stabilizer a little bit longer. So if this is a pocket or a zippered bag or something like that where I want this exposed zipper to show, I just want to have a little bit of extra room for the stabilizer. Because this is a pretty heavy zipper. All right, there's one side. Here's the other. And then there's one big difference for this one, which is just my preference, but I'll show you here in just a second. So I'm just going to use this old piece of fabric as my pressed. Why do I use this? This is just a piece of cotton fabric. You could use a piece of muslin fabric. Then you won't get the gook on your iron, number one, and two, you're protecting your fabric from the hot steam. All right, that looks great. Then you would run each of these edges through the serger. And we're going to sew in our zipper, right? But if I were to turn this over, sew the zipper in, I'd have to sew it in this way and flip it. And sew it in this way and flip it. What do you end up with? A couple big holes at each end. So my tip for sewing in the exposed zippers is to take a tab. This is just a piece of fabric, cut a little bit wider than the zipper. You can make it as long as you want. These are cut, looks like these are cut about, let's see, 4 inches long and 2 inches wide. So I have 2 of these. You could serge the edge if you want to, but I'm going to sew one end, stitch from here to here so it will flip open like this, and do the same thing at the other end. So let's go to the sewing machine. You'll probably see this a little better when we get to the machine. All right, more zippers. I'm going to turn this over. So your zipper is facing down, and here's the raw edge of your tab right here. I need to change my zipper foot to the other side. Get my hand out of there for you. So again, this is the raw edge. The zipper is facing down. And you'll stitch fairly close to this edge, but do not stitch over that metal part. Again, that's the base. I usually give it a little back stitch right there just to make sure it's nice and secure. And then to the other side. So there's the first side. You'll see that will end up flipping open. So here's the right side. See how it just gives you a little extra tab there? I could even sew that a little closer here. Sometimes I just fold it up and press it because I don't want to stitch too close to this. All right, so again, this side gets a little trickier. So I'm going to open my zipper up. Actually, I'll bring you out just a little bit so you can see this whole thing. Open your zipper. Just kind of butt that up in place. I'm going to fold it over because, again, our opening of our tab is right here, and this needs to be up close to that edge. Make sure your zipper's laying flat. You could always do a little tack right there if you want to keep it in place, but I don't really find a need for that. Try to keep my hand out of the way for you. Bring you just a little closer here. So this is a zipper that's exposed that's going to go into like a little pocket or something like that. So this is what I have so far. Let's head back to the ironing board. All right. Now my room's starting to look like a regular sewing day. I got fabric everywhere. So here is the part we just sewed. So again, on the outside, you can see the zipper was face down. We stitched across both ends. Flip this open. And if you want, you could leave a little bit of a fold right here. So it folds right to the edge of that zipper bottom. Using a little steam so I can make that nice crease right there. All right, so what do you have? Well, technically now you just have a little bit of a longer zipper. So pretty good, right? So now I can take my fabric with the fusible side down. I know that that's going to be sewn right here, and the other one is going to be sewn right here. Now, if I wanted to have this cover the entire bag, I would have the tabs as long as the bag. This is just scrap fabric, so I'll just kind of show you how I'm going to do this, and then we'll cut it so it's even. But this would be perfect for a little zippered bag or, like I said, an enclosed pocket. So this side, I need to go this way down, and we're going to stitch from here through the tab all the way up to the other tab. I will need to open my zipper because that's a really big zipper head right here. And it's an exposed zipper as well. So I'm just going to start with it right here. Let's see. No, I think I'll start with it closed for this side. And we'll stitch from here all the way up to right here. You can either do a lock stitch or a stay stitch. If you can slide the zipper open with the needle down, great. But a lot of times with something this big, I have to lift the needle, which you'll see. Let's go back over to the sewing machine. And we're almost finished with zipper number 2. So have you ever done this technique before? I think I showed this in one of my online classes many years ago for sewing bags. It's just an easy way to do stuff. Now, my tabs are much wider than my Let me bring this up. My tabs are wider than my fabric, so you can either cut those off first or cut them off later. It doesn't matter. I'll be cutting them off later. All right. I'll slide you over just a little bit more so my hand's not in your way. Okay. And I'm stitching basically right in the middle of the zipper tape here because I want the zipper to be exposed. When I get up close, about right there, this is where I can either lift up my needle and open this, but you're not going to be able to see that. So I'm going to do one stay stitch, cut the thread, right there, flip this and open this up all the way. Bring this back over and go right to where you had done that stay stitch. Put it back down. Line up my fabric, do another stay stitch. I love the stay stitch because it doesn't add a lot of bulk, but if you don't have that, just do a back stitch and then stitch down. Now this is going to be going into a seam somehow, some way, so there's really no need to back stitch there unless you really want to. All right, so what do we have here? Not all bad, right? Okay, we're going to do the same thing to this side. So find our stabilizer. It's going to be sewn in just like that. I always like to flip it over to make sure I'm sewing this in correctly. Now turn everything over. Make sure that this side is pushed out of the way that you just sewed. Now this time we're starting at the top. So I'm going to open the zipper up. Starting at the top of the tab. I love how the zipper foot just pushes right up against the zipper teeth. There's no need to be worried that, actually it's one of the easiest things to sew. Just because the zipper foot pushes against the teeth, you don't have to worry about anything. I'm going to do a stay stitch about right here so I have plenty of room. Cut my thread. Let's close this zipper back up. And if you're just popping in, you can hit replay on this. If you're on Facebook, just hit add it to your page. It's the easiest. Or if you know a friend that wants to learn how to sew zippers, share it with them. And if you're on YouTube, you can come back and watch anytime. Just click subscribe and you'll never miss one of our live shows. All right, so there's another stay stitch. And now we're going to stitch all the way down. To the other end. And there I did back stitch just out of habit. All right, so the back side looks like this. Let's go to the ironing board. I think you'll be able to see it just a little bit better there. And I'll explain what I was talking about, the tabs. All right. So hopefully when I'm finished here, you're going to be so excited to sew zippers. So this is the back side. I'm going to give it a little pressing here. I'm a little bit of a pressing freak. Yes, yes. Okay. These tabs right here, they're wider than my seam. So I would trim them here. Trim them here. If you're going to serge that edge, you could do it now or you could have done it before. Totally up to you. A lot of times these are hidden inside lining anyways. It really doesn't matter. So I was trimming the tabs so they were the same width as the seam I just did. Okay, now let's go to this side. Give it another pressing. So here you have a few options. First of all, when I purposely made my tabs a little shorter so you could see them. If this was the entire width of the bag, I would have made those tabs all the way to the end. It's just so much easier to sew an exposed zipper like that. And a lot of times you can add a little embroidery, things like that. But let's just say that my bag was really this big, like this, or my pocket, or whatever I'm putting this in. So this is what it should look like when you're finished. It's all the same length. So it fits right in there so nicely. Easy to open, easy to close. Now, the next step for this, I will usually do a nice top stitch on both sides, which is why I was giving it a little pressing here. Let me give it one more pressing. There you go. So again, I will use the zipper foot just so I can stay just along the edge on both sides. As you can see, the two tabs, a lot of times I'll use maybe a contrasting fabric, or I'll use some embroidery or something really fun in here. It's a great place to use your decorative stitches too. So this is the last step. We'll go back to the sewing machine. Okay, now for the top stitching, pick whatever stitch length you want. I'm going to use a 3.0 for this. You should be able to get around the zipper head just fine, but if not, I'm just going to show you how to do this. Open it up a little bit. And then when you get down to here, go ahead and close it. No need to cut this time because you got plenty of room. You should at least have plenty of room, unless you're sewing this really close to the edge. Can't believe it. It's a live show and I haven't run out of bobbin thread yet. That never happens. And I'm leaning over the camera, so forgive my any crooked stitches, all right? It's about here. Let's open this up. And go to the other end. All right. Now you have the nice top stitching, holds the seam in place. It won't pop open. Pretty simple. So what did you think of that? Easy? I thought it was pretty easy. Okay, so I can't wait to see your comments about this. Since I'm not exactly here with you to bring your comments up, I'll be going back. If you want something answered, by the way, the easiest and best way to do that is to either leave something now or afterwards head over to the YouTube page. We're on Brothers Sews YouTube, and leave a comment there because I always go back and check those. It's hard to see all of the live ones later, so just ask it again and I'll pop in there this evening. All right, 2 easy ways to sew a zipper. Now, I would love to know if you're going to try this. Have you ever done the tabs like this for an exposed zipper? So if I wanted to turn this into a bag right now, I could just literally sew this down both sides and flip it open and I'd have an exposed zipper bag. Very easy to do. But this is a great way to do pockets too. So a lot of times if I have a pocket inside one of my jackets or inside, I always have little secret pockets for credit cards and cash, like when you're traveling and I don't want to carry a bag. It's a great spot for it. So 2 easy zippers, an exposed zipper, and a regular zipper that won't wrinkle. I call it the wiggly zipper. So again, pop in, say hi. I look forward to seeing your comments. It's Angela Wolf here. We have the schedule up for you. Go to angelawolf.com. I have the entire Brothers schedule coming, so you'll know who's going to be on there, what's happening. And if you ever need to find me, you know where that happens. And again, go visit your brother dealer. There's a lot of great deals right now. And you know what's coming, the Avenir. So if you want to go get a sneak peek, go visit your dealer. And until next time, everyone.